Good afternoon, everyone. Um, am I audible? Great. Sessions after lunch are always the toughest, but I hope I can make this interesting for you and you get to learn something about what's going on in the world of critical materials, particularly in India. On 9th of February, earlier this year, the government of India declared discovery of some lithium resources in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. How many of you have heard about that? Awesome. Did you get excited about it? So did a lot of folks in my family who had nothing to do with energy transition, who had got nothing to do with renewables, who had got nothing to do with anything in this space of materials. I was absolutely overwhelmed by that excitement. Clearly, I could only imagine what that level of excitement may have been back in the 1840s when California discovered gold, or in the 1930s when Saudis struck their first oil. A nation clearly understands the importance of its materials. A nation and its people understand the importance of the material to their own destiny. And needless to say, as we enter this new era of energy transition, space technology, AI, it is very, very relevant to say that material transition is going to play an equally critical role. And that is what I'm going to talk about today, what material transition truly means for India, for the world at large, and how should we go about thinking about it. The future of the world as we understand, two broad sets of areas where a lot of work is happening are in the areas of clean energy and in the areas of AI/data/compute. And you see critical materials playing a role across all of them. Some of them you're very familiar with, such as lithium, cobalt, nickel. These are names that keep cropping up in the newspapers almost every other day. And there are a whole bunch of other materials that you may have never heard of, such as neodymium, scandium, and whatnot, what we call as rare earth metals, that are playing their equally important role. These materials have become important for a couple of reasons. A, in certain cases, such as that of an electric vehicle, they probably are amongst the costliest part of the vehicle, can account for almost 30% of the cost of the vehicle. Or in other cases, such as hydrogen, solar, semiconductors, they become super critical to providing efficiency or performance in the final product in which they are put. These materials, today at least, globally different countries have deemed different kinds of materials as critical. India in particular has mentioned 30 different materials as critical materials for the country. And the idea is to figure out what the critical material strategy of the country should be. Why are critical materials called critical materials? A very important part of them being labeled as critical is the supply risk associated with them. What you see out there are two charts, one on the left in terms of where the material is originally present, and two on the right, where the material actually gets refined and productized. I don't think it's a surprise, I don't think it should come as a surprise to most of you that the red color, which denotes China, is clearly dominating the market, both in terms of controlling where the material is and where the material gets productized. And this is a big challenge that is being faced by the world at large today. Whatever be the material, and I've put some out here, which are all deemed critical by India, US, EU, and other parts of the world, they're all very clearly getting productized in a singular nation. And that certainly puts the world at risk. Some of you may wonder, how large is this problem? Why are we even talking about this problem? It is said that for us to get to net zero by 2050, the world needs 8 billion tons of materials, some of which are relatively abundant, such as steel and aluminum, and the others are not so abundant, or they may not have necessary mining capacities available today. Of that 8 billion tons, 400 million tons are materials which are just straight out what are known as technology materials, nickel, cobalt, lithium, gallium, germanium, the rare earths. And we expect even post-2050, assuming the world does transition to net zero by 2050, we expect us to have a continuous demand of 100 million tons of these critical materials every year. McKinsey quantified the kind of investment needed in this space for us to actually get to these materials out there. And the number was put at approximately $400 billion per year for the next decade or so. So very, very significant investments for us to ensure that we get a very critical supply of these materials. And without these materials, we cannot transition to the world that we are all envisaging. A world of AI, a world of clean energy, a world of space tech, a world where we are trying to challenge the frontiers of humanity. What has happened historically? Time to take a step back and think about historically how nations have thought about materials. A lot of you are probably familiar with some of the things that are out there on the slide. We know about the spice trade. We know about gold rush in California. We know about opium trade and tea taxes in China. We know about, some of you may have heard of the salt wars. And of course, all of us are familiar with the modern geopolitics associated with oil. Historically, nations, and not just nations, the world has been shaped by these materials. The world has went to many wars because of these materials. The world today as it stands is because of how we thought about these materials. These materials have significant economic importance and hence a significant bearing on the lives of the citizenry of any particular nation where they are present in relevant numbers. Of course, all of us sitting here today don't want another war. We saw how these materials are getting monopolized, but I don't think any of us wants history to repeat. So the world is busy trying to negotiate. There are a lot of negotiations going on, a lot of different forums that have been created, a lot of different platforms that have been created, a lot of rules that are getting created, a lot of policies that are put in place, where the world is trying to collaborate on these critical materials, trying to forge partnerships amongst different nations. India in particular is trying to do something similar both with the US and the European Union, as well as with our counterparts in Australia and Japan. So a lot of work is happening here. A lot of different ministries within the government of India are involved in forging these partnerships. But the brutal reality, and those of us who are practitioners in the industry, we know the brutal reality today is outside of China. No one has quite figured it out. Absolutely no one has quite figured out what is going to be their solution to critical materials going forward, at scale in particular, as they fulfill their commitments to net zero. We've come up with a 4T framework for India. I come here because I'm batting for India. I do believe this could be India's opportunity to take global leadership. I think it could be India's opportunity to shine and do something very exemplary in the global market with respect to critical materials. And the 4 Ts, as I identify them, are talent, technology, trade, and throughput. These are 4 areas in which India should start engaging with the rest of the world to start understanding how to play this game out very effectively. India has an abundant supply of engineering talent, an abundant supply of researchers who are doing something in the area of critical materials. We have an ability to create a lot of capacity in the nation very quickly compared to what is happening in other parts of the world. Via trade, we have to forge partnerships with various original material suppliers, and the trade has to be one where we are ensuring not just our own nation's benefit, but the benefit of the nation which originally owns the material. And of course, needless to say, none of this can be done properly and effectively if we don't have the right technology, which is where I bring probably the most important challenge that we face as a nation. Where are we with respect to technology? Where are we with respect to R&D? As of 2023, you see that pie chart on the right, 35% of the papers that have been published in important international journals with respect to chemistry, materials, metals, chemical engineering have come from China, and India is sitting at about 3%. It's not a surprise to any of us. There are virtuous cycles and vicious cycles around these things. You start doing R&D only when you have an industry and academia which is ready to pay and which is ready to create good paying jobs to attract the right talent to R&D, and then that's a self-fulfilling cycle that takes place. So in India, we need to build capacities that will attract more talent, that will attract more research, and consequently that will help the industry grow even further and allow us to solve the broader problem that the world is facing. Quick snapshot of what we are doing in my organization. We started about 6 years back, and in a very short time frame, we have taken leadership in the critical material space in India. And we are in target to meet 50% of Niti Aayog's forecasts for critical material by the end of the decade. A lot of this has been done because I'm very diligently trying to follow the framework that I had put out there. There's a lot of focus on R&D. There's a lot of focus in developing technology in-house. We forged partnerships at this stage as an individual company with entities in Indonesia, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Argentina, which are 3 countries which are important suppliers of critical materials. We have built quite a significant amount of capacity and quite quickly in the nation, and we hope to continue developing on this. More importantly, we've also created a full-scale circularity here, where we are able to recycle every bit of critical material that goes out into the market. Why does circularity matter? As you may recall from the earlier part of the discussion here, earlier part of the presentation here, I had mentioned how even post-2050, once we get to net zero, we'll still need a very significant supply of 150 tons of critical material every year. And that we can't keep digging up Mother Earth. At some point of time, we have to do other things which are better, friendlier, and easier for all of us. And hence, recycling plays a very, very important role. And it's very encouraging to say that at Niti Aayog, the present government's critical focus on circularity has helped all of us push the right policies in the country. I think my last slide has disappeared. Oh. To summarize, I would just like to sort of lift a quote from our Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, and he had mentioned this back in 2018. We neither have the intention of exploiting anyone's resources, nor are we eyeing anyone's territory. Our focus has always been on capacity building and resource development. I pray and hope that we are able to do something similar in the critical material space, where we nurture the right talent, build the right capacity to ensure economic security, energy security, material prosperity of our citizens. And with that, I conclude my talk. Thank you so much.